Hey there, everyone. We got here with us Professor James O'Brien, physicist. How's it going,
Hey,
James?
hey, Bob, it's great. It's great to be with you. I miss seeing you on campus, and I miss our Tuesday lunches. So it's
Yes,
Wednesday, so we're like in this environment, plus or minus a day is good, right?
yes, yes, plus or minus a day. It's good. So it's good to see you. And I wanted to bring you on board to talk about this argument that I'm having my students look at, and I thought you could weigh in. So,
Absolutely.
great. We're looking at arguments for God's existence. And here's one that purports to be based on physics. It's got two premises.
Okay.
So the first idea is that anything that begins to exist must have a cause. Nothing can come to exist without something that brought it into existence. Okay, that's the first idea. The second idea is that the universe began to exist, that there was a beginning to this whole crazy universe that we live in now.
Yeah,
And so the arguer just takes these two ideas and says, well, combine them together, it implies the universe had a cause, and that's
I
God.
get it. I
So
get it.
I
Yep.
thought, let's check in with the physicist here and see what your thoughts are about these two ideas. In particular, what do physicists today think about whether the universe began to exist?
This is a very difficult question for physicists to answer, and we're very good at dodging this question, by the way, right? If you look at Big Bang theory, which is a fantastic and the most widely accepted and just data to back it up about cosmology or the universe as a whole, um, we're pretty confident in Big Bang expansion and Big Bang nucleosynthesis and everything else. Okay, so the problem though is that we have some numbers figured out super good, right? Rough estimate of the age of the universe, rough estimate of the size of the universe based on the ratio of the speed of light and other things. The cosmic microwave background has really done great about telling us when some of this stuff happened. So basically, up after the first 3 minutes of the universe, we got that, like, with the theories that we have established in the last, let's say, 300 years, we can get a really good understanding of everything that happened after the first 3 minutes. Cool. First 3 minutes gets a little bit dodgy,
Okay.
but physicists have a real tough time saying that at the beginning, what was that Big Bang? There was some stuff, right? Some energy, and it banged. Why it banged, or how long did it exist for before that? That is a question that we literally just don't even make a speculation about the guess of.
Ah,
Time t equals 0 for us is at the Big Bang. So anything before the Big Bang is almost kind of not part of the system here. And so that makes it very interesting for these types of philosophical arguments, because if our premise is that t equals 0 is at the Big Bang, right, then
yes.
there's clearly a start,
Uh-huh.
right? And you almost then can't ask the question as to, well, what was before the start? Because then we're into one of these arguments that, well, that's the start. There is no before the start, right?
So like in a video that I was having my students watch, they cite these three physicists. I'll give
Who
you
are
their
they?
names here.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've heard of them. We got Board, Guth, and Vilenkin.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so I've had dialogue and discussion with Guth, and he's, him I'm very familiar with. The other two, not so much.
So they say that Guth has proved that any expanding universe that started any universe that's been expanding. So I guess maybe if it had a bang at some point, must have a beginning. And it sounds like you're suggesting that this is just all physicists would have to accept this,
I
because
think we do.
if you go back in time to a point where its time is 0, by definition, that's your beginning.
That exactly, and I think that's why we're very good at dodging this, right? Because if you really think about what I said, and even Guth gets into some of this, right, is that the Big Bang happened. That's point of agreement, right? But in order for the Big Bang to happen, something has had to exist, right? The energy that produced the Big Bang had to exist. Yet we still choose to put our clocks at t equals 0 when it's bang happening, not energy beforehand, just, I don't know, hanging out.
Well, so here's my next question. So I want to keep it relatively brief here, but here's the
Yeah.
next question. So another premise in the argument is that anything that begins to exist must have a cause. So do physicists buy into that to say that, look, before time zero, if the universe comes to be, there has to be something that causes it, some energy, some force?
Well, yeah, I mean that's what we would say is that we dodge, and maybe, and I'll speak for I'll speak for physicists here, right? We dodge the God argument by saying that if t equals 0 is the bang itself, right? The bang was caused by some energy. Energy almost becomes this God-like thing, right? The energy had to have existed. And don't forget, by the way, right? Basic physics, which is true at all physics, right, tells us that energy can neither be created nor destroyed.
Right.
Right? This is conservation of energy. This almost then becomes some scientific version of a God principle, right? It just can't be created nor destroyed. So therefore, it always has had to have existed.
I mean, it's very interesting. And it's so fascinating because in my class, we've been struggling to define God.
Yeah.
What do we mean by God? And if we
Oh,
look at certain traditions like the Jewish, the Christian, the Islamic tradition, God is not just energy. God is all loving, God is all knowing, God is all powerful. And so it sounds like the physics God, or the stand-in for God, is just the energy that created the Big Bang. Doesn't quite, at this point, we'd need further argumentation to show that it has these other properties.
that's right. I would say, and I would say, if it's not the energy, some physicists might say, if you read some, even books by someone like Guth, not saying that he said this, but people who not only do heavy scientific papers, but they also write about physics for the general population. A lot of them will dance around the God issue and say, well, maybe they don't believe in a particular deity, but nature itself, or the rules of nature, for us, that means the mathematics of nature kind of become like our God, right? Those are the things that we abide by and sets out the rules of what can and can't be done and what can and cannot be violated. And that becomes almost godlike for us, the order of it, if you will, or
Yes.
the relation of it.
And so interesting that some physicists, I would think, could buy into that picture and still consider themselves atheists.
Yes. And by the way, so again, I know you want to keep it brief. Maybe this is a whole other conversation. My head has been spinning on that particular topic for the last couple of weeks, maybe because my brain is all over the place with the COVID disaster. But there are physicists that are hyper religious in like let's say the deity sense, and there are probably much more physicists who are hardcore atheists, right? And so one of the things that I've been trying to ponder is, as someone who is not very religious, I think I'm a little bit spiritual, but not religious, is which one actually makes more sense? Which one is more probable? But like the order that we see, right? Is that better imply that there is some sort of deity, or does that better imply that we should be atheists? And I don't know where my brain lands on that
Yes.
one. I used to think that the atheist had it completely right, that science is equivalent with atheism, but I think that science is also quite compatible with some sort of deity and theology as well.
This has been a tremendously important discussion for us to have because the video makes it sound like physics has proved God's existence. And I think it's really good that we're talking about this to indicate that it's not something that's been decided yet. And we continue to gather evidence on one side or the other. So it's really great to have a physics perspective on this to see where things stand. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. Let me just give one extra blurb to that last piece,
Yes.
because you've heard me say this, but your students might not have. When we co-taught this class together, one of the first days that we taught was about paradigm shift, right? And we
Yes.
asked the question, is science ever really right? And as a scientist, I will tell you right now, the answer is no. It's never completely 100% right. And so, yeah, I get very hesitant when people say, we proved this. Right now we have a good understanding of something. And with that something, these are the conclusions that we can make. But it doesn't mean that we're still not collecting better and better data. And those conclusions might look way different when someone watches this 20 years in the future.
Exactly. This is such an important point. Science continues to evolve. and students get frustrated in my classes because we never get to an answer. But
Yes.
philosophy continues to think deeply about these questions precisely because our understanding is changing over time.
That's right. And I think it's inevitable that the two started as one, right? Science and philosophy were one thing. And then they part ways. But I think that if anything, if you're ever to have a real answer and I'm ever to have a real answer, it's only because these two paths came right back around to one, right? Because we're still trying to answer the same thing, but as the
Yes.
systems evolve, it looks a little bit different. But if you ever want that complete answer, that circle's got to be completed.
Thank you so much, James, for joining us for this discussion. This has been so wonderful.
Thanks, Bob. Anytime.
I'm going to stop the recording here.